"I need the money today," my daughter ordered, handing me the paperwork for a $500,000 loan my son-in-law had taken out. "And don't give me the runaround," she insisted. I just said, "Okay." Hours later, I boarded an international flight. When they arrived at my house to collect the cash, they found everything locked up and nothing but a note on the door. When they read it, they started calling me in a panic. But let me tell you how I got to that moment. How a 67-year-old widow, living a quiet, simple life, ended up running from her own daughter as if escaping a mortal danger. Because that is exactly what I did. I escaped. And I don't regret it. That morning started like any other. I was in the kitchen, brewing a pot of coffee. The house was silent. It was that specific kind of silence you know well when you live alone, when your kids have grown up and moved out, when your husband is gone, and the only company you have are memories and the sound of your own footsteps on the hardwood floors. It was hot, the kind of heavy, East Coast humidity that makes you sweat without even moving, making your clothes stick to your skin. I had cracked the windows, but there wasn't a breeze to be found. Everything was still, tense, as if something bad was about to happen. Then I heard the car, the loud rumble of Jessica's SUV, my daughter. I recognized the sound before I saw her. She always arrived like that, abruptly, without warning, like a thunderstorm that doesn't give you time to batten down the hatches. She didn't ring the doorbell. She never did. The front door swung open with force, and she walked in as if the house were still hers, as if I didn't have a right to my own privacy, as if my space didn't deserve respect. She had a thick folder tucked under her arm, a brown manila envelope, stuffed with papers, and she wore that expression on her face, that hard, cold, calculating look. The look of someone who comes to ask for something but does it as if giving an order, as if you didn't have a choice. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I had slept. She didn't ask if I was feeling okay. She didn't even fake an interest. She just walked straight to the kitchen island and dropped the folder with a dry thud. The mugs rattled. A little sugar spilled onto the counter. I stood there, coffee pot in hand, feeling the steam rising against my fingers. I looked at her. I waited. I knew something was coming. Something always came when Jessica showed up like this. She looked me up and down. Was she evaluating me? Measuring if I was strong enough for what she was about to say? Or maybe just calculating how much she could get out of me this time? And then she just let it out. No preamble, no softness. Nothing that resembled the affection of a daughter toward her mother. "I need you to pay off a debt." I blinked. I set the coffee pot back on the stove. My hands were trembling, but I tried to hide it. "A big debt, Mom. $500,000. The world stopped. $500,000. The number echoed in my head like a scream, like a siren, like the sound of something breaking forever. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat. $500,000. That amount of money was more than I had earned in my entire working life. It was more than I had saved. It was impossible. Jessica opened the folder. She pulled out papers, legal documents, contracts, notary stamps, signatures. It all looked official, serious, urgent. "Kevin signed a loan," she said with a huff. "But things went south. Now the banks are chasing him. There are threats of foreclosure, lawsuits. They even talked about jail time." I remained silent, looking at the papers without really seeing them, trying to process what I was hearing. "I need you to pay it, Mom. Today. There's no if. If we don't pay, we lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. And Kevin could go to prison." Her voice didn't shake. There were no tears. There was no real desperation. Only demands. Only that coldness I had learned to recognize over the years. "But Jessica," I finally managed to say, my voice cracking, "I don't have that kind of money." She looked at me as if I were stupid. "Of course you do, Mom. You have your savings. Dad's life insurance payout. The investments you guys made together. I know you have money stashed away." My heart squeezed. Yes, I had savings. Savings that my husband and I had scraped together over 40 years of work. Savings that were for my old age, for medical emergencies. So I wouldn't be a burden on anyone, so I could live out my final years with dignity. That money is for me, honey. For my future. For when I can't work anymore. For when I need care. I am your future, she screamed, slapping the table with her palm. I am your family. Or what? Are you going to let your own son-in-law go to jail? Are you going to let us lose everything, after everything we've done for you? Everything they had done for me? I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream at her that she hadn't done a thing for me in years, that she barely visited, that she only appeared when she needed something. Money, favors, someone to watch her kids while she went on vacation. But I didn't say any of that, because that's how it had always been. Me silent, me obedient, me sacrificing myself. Mom, Jessica said, changing her tone to something that pretended to be softer. It's just a loan. We'll pay you back. In a few months, when the business picks up, we'll return everything. With interest. I promise. Promises. How many promises had I heard in my life, and how many had been kept? None. I need the money today, she repeated. And don't give me the runaround. There's no time for drama, Mom. Either you pay, or Kevin goes to jail, and we lose everything. You decide. I looked at her. I looked into those eyes that were once the eyes of my baby, my little girl, and now I only saw coldness, manipulation, selfishness. And then, from somewhere deep inside me, from a place I didn't even know existed, an answer came out. Okay. Jessica blinked, surprised. I think she expected resistance. She expected tears. She expected me to beg, to argue, to break down like always. But I just repeated, with a strange calm. Okay, I'll take care of it. Her face changed. From surprise, it went to relief, and then to something resembling satisfaction, as if she had won something. She hugged me. A quick, mechanical hug, void of love, and she told me she knew she could count on me, that I had always been a good mother, that this was just temporary. Lies. All lies. Jessica checked the time on her smartphone and said she would be back at 4 in the afternoon to pick up the money, that she needed it in cash or a cashier's check, that there was no time for standard bank transfers. I nodded, like an automaton, like someone who isn't really present anymore. She left my house with the same speed she had entered, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and impossible demands. The door closed. The silence returned, but this time it was different. This silence was full of decision, full of something that had been asleep inside me for years. I looked at the clock. It was 9 in the morning, and in that moment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I stood there in my kitchen for several minutes after Jessica left. The coffee had gone completely cold. Steam no longer rose from the pot. Everything was cold, like my heart in that moment. I looked at the folder she had left on the table. All those papers. All those documents that supposedly justified me handing over the money of my entire life, the money my husband and I had saved with so much sacrifice. I remembered my husband, Arthur. He died 5 years ago. A sudden heart attack that didn't even give him time to say goodbye. I was left alone, with his pension, with our savings, with this house we bought together when we were young and had dreams. Arthur always told me to keep money aside, not to trust the kids with everything. He was more skeptical than I was, more practical. He said children have their own lives and we had to look after ours. I didn't pay him much mind. I thought it was selfish to think that way, that parents should give everything for their children, always, without conditions, without limits. But now, standing in that empty kitchen, with the weight of $500,000 on my shoulders, I started to understand what Arthur had tried to tell me. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes, and then I moved. I went to my bedroom. I opened the closet. I pulled out a small duffel bag, one of those you use for a weekend getaway. Nothing big, nothing that would draw attention. I started packing clothes. Comfortable clothes, simple clothes. I didn't think much. I just acted. Because I knew if I stopped to think too much, I would back out. And I couldn't back out. Not this time. I took my important documents, my passport, my ID, the deed to the house, the bank certificates, everything that proved who I was and what I had. I put them in a folder and placed it in the bag. Then I went to the living room. I turned on the computer, that old desktop my grandson had taught me how to use. I logged into my bank account. I looked at the balance. It was all there. A lifetime of savings. $180,000. It wasn't enough to pay Kevin's debt. It wasn't even half. But Jessica knew that. She knew exactly how much I had. And yet she had come to demand I pay $500,000. As if I could invent money. As if my life didn't matter. I made a transfer. I moved all the money to another account. An account I had opened years ago at a different bank. An account nobody knew about. Not even Jessica. Arthur had taught me that. Always have an emergency fund, he used to say. An account nobody knows about. Just in case. Just in case. How right he was. The transfer took a few minutes to process. I waited, staring at the screen, feeling my heart beating faster and faster. When the confirmation finally appeared, I let out the breath I had been holding. The money was safe. Away from Jessica. Away from Kevin. Away from their problems and their debts and their selfishness. Then I called my main bank. I asked to speak to the branch manager, a woman who had known me for years. I explained that I needed to freeze my account, that there was a complicated family situation, that no one should have access to my money without my direct, in-person authorization. She understood. She didn't ask questions. She just said she would do it immediately, and she gave me an emergency number in case I needed anything else. I hung up the phone. I looked at the clock. It was 10 in the morning. I still had 6 hours before Jessica returned. Enough time. I went to the kitchen. I took a sheet of paper, a pen, and I wrote. I wrote with a trembling hand, but with firm words. Jessica, I am not going to pay a debt that isn't mine. I am not going to continue being invisible in my own life. For years I have sacrificed for you. I have given everything I had. My time, my energy, my money, and it has never been enough. You always want more. You always demand more. As if I didn't have a right to exist beyond what I can give you. But it's over. I'm leaving. Don't look for me. I need to live what remains of my life with dignity, with peace, without feeling like I'm just a bank account to you. Take care. Mom. I read the note 3 times. Each time I felt something different. The first time, guilt. The second time, fear. The third time, liberation. I folded the paper. I put it in an envelope. I wrote Jessica's name on the front, and I left it on the dining room table, right where she couldn't miss it. Then I went to the landline. I called a cab. I asked for it to come in an hour, to take me to the airport. The dispatcher asked if I had a flight booked. I said no, that I would buy it there. She said that was fine, that the taxi would arrive at 11:30. I hung up, and then, for the first time all morning, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I was about to do. I sat on the living room sofa, that sofa where I had nursed Jessica when she was a baby, where I had comforted her when she cried, where we had watched movies together when she was a little girl and still loved me. Or at least it seemed that way. When had everything changed? When had Jessica become this cold, demanding, cruel person? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. It had been gradual. So gradual I didn't notice until it was too late. Until she already saw me only as a resource. Not as a person. Not as her mother. Just as someone she could take whatever she needed from. And I had allowed it to happen. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I gave money I didn't have. Every time I swallowed my pain so as not to inconvenience her. But no more. I got up from the sofa. I went to the bathroom. I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 67-year-old woman. A woman with wrinkles, with gray hair, with tired eyes. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw determination. I saw someone who could still save herself. I left the bathroom. I grabbed my bag. I checked that I had everything. Clothes, documents, medication, a little cash, the essentials. I walked through the house one last time. I touched the walls, the furniture, the pictures. This house that had been my home for so many years. I said goodbye in silence. I didn't know when I would return. If I would return. At 11:20, the horn honked outside. The taxi had arrived. I took my bag. I locked the door. I left the spare key hidden under a flower pot, like always, and I got into the taxi. The driver was an older man, about my age, more or less. He looked at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "To the airport, ma'am?" "Yes," I replied. "To the airport. Pleasure trip?" I stayed silent for a moment. Pleasure? No. Necessity? Yes. Survival? Definitely. Something like that, I finally said. He didn't ask any more questions. He just drove. I looked out the window. I saw my neighborhood, the streets I had walked thousands of times, the corner store, the bakery, the park where I took Jessica when she was little. Everything looked the same. But I was no longer the same. We arrived at the airport at noon. I paid the driver. I gave him a generous tip. He helped me with the bag and wished me a good trip. I entered the terminal. I looked at the departure boards. There were flights everywhere, to cities I knew, to countries I had only seen on television. I approached an airline counter. A young woman attended to me with a smile. "How can I help you?" "I need a ticket," I said. "For today. For the next available flight." She looked at her computer. "We have a flight to Miami in 2 hours. And another to Panama City in 3. "The one to Miami," I said without thinking much. "First class." She raised her eyebrows, surprised. But she didn't say anything. She just processed the purchase. I paid with my credit card. The transaction was approved. She handed me the printed boarding pass. "Gate 12, boarding at 2:30. "Have a good trip, ma'am." I took the ticket. I went through security. I sat in the waiting area. I pulled out my phone. I looked at it for a long while. Then I turned it off completely. I didn't want to receive calls. I didn't want messages. I didn't want to hear Jessica's voice when she discovered I wasn't there. It was 2 in the afternoon when they announced boarding. I stood up. I got in line. I boarded the plane. I found my seat. I sat by the window. I fastened my seatbelt. And as the plane began to move, as we left the terminal behind, I thought about Jessica arriving at my house right at that moment, knocking on the door, calling out, waiting. I thought about her face when she received no answer, about how she would force the entry, about how she would find the house empty. I thought about her reading my note, and I didn't feel guilt. I only felt relief. The plane took off at 3 in the afternoon, an hour before Jessica was set to arrive to collect her money. From my seat on the plane, thousands of feet in the air, I imagined exactly what was happening at my house. I could see it all in my mind with a clarity that almost scared me. Jessica arriving at 4 o'clock sharp, always punctual when it came to money, parking her SUV in the driveway, getting out with Kevin. He was probably nervous, restless, desperate. She was sure, confident, convinced that I had obeyed like always. I imagined them ringing the doorbell. Once, twice, waiting. Looking at each other with confusion when no one answered. Jessica pulling out her phone, calling me, listening to it ring and ring without an answer. My phone off, tucked away at the bottom of my bag. Kevin pounding on the door. Harder, yelling my name. "Eleanor, Mrs. Eleanor." Nothing. Only silence. Jessica walking around the house, peeking through the windows, all the curtains drawn, everything dark, everything still. And then the panic starting to set in. That feeling that something wasn't right, that something had gone terribly wrong. Kevin forcing the door. It wasn't hard. The lock was old. With a strong shove, it would break. And entering, the two of them entering my house. Calling me, searching for me in every room. The empty kitchen, the empty living room, my empty bedroom. And finally seeing the envelope on the dining table. The white envelope with Jessica's name written in my handwriting. I imagined her hands trembling as she opened it, her eyes reading every word, once, twice, trying to understand. I am not going to pay a debt that isn't mine. I saw her face going pale, her lips tightening, the rage rising in her throat. Kevin snatching the letter from her hands, reading it himself, cursing, yelling, saying this couldn't be happening. Jessica pulling out her phone again, calling me 1, 5, 10, 20 times, leaving voicemails I would never listen to, at least not for a good while. I saw them checking the whole house, looking for clues, looking for some sign of where I had gone. But there was nothing. I had been careful. And then, Jessica rushing to the bank, arriving 15 minutes before closing, demanding to speak to someone, demanding to know about my account, the manager refusing to give information. saying that only I could authorize that there were specific instructions not to allow access to anyone else. Jessica screaming, making a scene, saying she was my daughter, that she had a right, that it was an emergency. Security escorting her out of the bank. Kevin waiting for her in the car, asking her what had happened, and her unable to answer, unable to explain how her own mother, the woman who had always said yes to everything, had suddenly said no, and not just no. She had disappeared. That image made me smile, a small smile, sad, but real. The flight attendant passed by offering drinks. I asked for water. My throat was dry. I drank slowly, watching the clouds through the window. I thought about how I had reached this point, about all the years of sacrifice, about all the times I had put Jessica's needs above my own. When she was little, it was understandable. Children need, parents give. That's how it works. I gave with love, with joy, with all my heart. But Jessica never stopped needing, or rather, she never stopped demanding. When she turned 18 and went to college, I paid for everything. Tuition, the apartment, books, food, everything. Arthur told me she should work at least part-time, that she should learn the value of $1, but I didn't want to. I didn't want her to suffer. I didn't want her to have the struggles I had. When she met Kevin, I wasn't sure about him. There was something in his eyes that didn't convince me. Something superficial, something fake. But Jessica was in love. And I said nothing. I didn't want to be the controlling mother, the mother who ruins her daughter's happiness. They got married, an expensive wedding that Arthur and I paid for. Every detail, every flower, every plate of food, $50,000 in total. Money we had saved for years. Jessica didn't even thank us. She said it was the least we could do, that it was our duty as parents, our duty. Then came the grandchildren, 2 beautiful boys I adored, but whom I barely saw because Jessica was always busy. She only called me when she needed a free babysitter, when she had to travel, when she wanted to go out with Kevin. I watched the kids with love. But when I asked when I could visit them some other time, Jessica always had excuses. They were busy. They had plans. Another day that never came. When Arthur died, Jessica showed up at the funeral. She stayed for an hour. She said she had to leave because the kids had activities. She left me alone with my grief, with my empty house, with the weight of a shared life that was suddenly just mine. For months I didn't hear from her, until one day she appeared. She needed money. Kevin had lost his job. They needed help with the mortgage. I gave them $20,000, almost everything I had left after the funeral expenses. They promised to pay me back. They never did. 6 months later, she came back. Another emergency, another problem, another amount, and I kept giving. Because that's what mothers do, right? They give. They always give. Until there is nothing left to give. The plane started to descend. The flight attendant announced we would be arriving in Miami in 15 minutes. I looked out the window. I saw the city below, the lights, the buildings, a new place, a place where no one knew me, where no one would demand anything from me. We landed smoothly. People started to get up, grabbing their things from the overhead bins. I waited. I wasn't in a hurry. When I finally got off the plane, I entered the terminal. Everything was in English, of course. I spoke English perfectly fine. I had lived here my whole life. But I preferred to look for signs of comfort. I went to baggage claim. I waited at the carousel as the suitcases circled. Mine came out quickly, a small duffel bag containing my entire life at this moment. I walked out of the airport. The Miami heat hit me like a wave. It was different from the heat at home, more humid, heavier. I hailed a cab. I told the driver to take me to a hotel, an affordable one. I didn't need luxury. I just needed a place to sleep, to think, to decide what to do next. He took me to a hotel near the airport. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean. Safe. Enough. I paid for 3 nights. The receptionist gave me the key to room 304. I went up in the elevator, walked down the hall, opened the door to my room. It was small. A bed, a bathroom, an old TV, a window that looked out onto the parking lot. I left my bag on the bed. I sat beside it. And for the first time all day, I allowed myself to feel the exhaustion. It was late. Back home, it would be almost 9 at night. Jessica would have spent the last 5 hours looking for me, calling me, probably thinking about calling the police. But she couldn't report me as missing. I was an adult. I had the right to leave. I had the right to disappear if I wanted to. I pulled out my phone, still off. I turned it on. I waited for it to boot up. When it finally turned on, the notifications started rolling in, one after another, like an avalanche. 53 missed calls from Jessica, 32 text messages, 15 voicemails. I didn't open any of them. I didn't listen to any of them. I just looked at the numbers. Desperation turned into data, and then I wrote a single message, short, direct. I'm okay. I'm safe. Don't look for me. I need time. I sent it, and I turned the phone off again. I lay down on the bed. I looked at the ceiling. The water stains formed strange shapes, like clouds, like faces. I thought about what I had done, the enormity of it all. I had left my house, my life, everything I knew. For the first time in 67 years, I had no idea what would come next. And instead of scaring me, that gave me peace. I closed my eyes, and I slept, deeply, without dreams, without nightmares, just silence. I woke up with sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The room was strange. The sounds were different. Then I remembered. Miami. The hotel. The escape. I sat up in bed. My body ached. It hadn't been a dream. Everything was real. I looked at the clock on the nightstand. It was 7 in the morning. I had slept almost 10 hours straight. I didn't remember the last time I had slept that much. At home, I always woke up early, with that anxiety in my chest that wouldn't let me rest. But here, in this anonymous hotel, in this city where no one knew me, I had slept like I hadn't in years. I got up, went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, looked at myself in the mirror, the same tired eyes, the same wrinkles. But something had changed. Something in my gaze. I didn't see defeat anymore. I saw determination. I dressed in clean clothes. I went down to the hotel lobby. There was a small continental breakfast. Bagels, coffee, fruit. I took a little of everything and sat at a table by the window. While I ate, I watched the people. Businessmen in their suits, families with small children, couples of tourists planning their day. Everyone had a direction, a purpose. I had none. And strangely, that didn't bother me. I finished my coffee. I went back to my room. I pulled out my phone, turned it on, waited. The notifications started again. More calls, more messages. But this time there was something different. There were also messages from unknown numbers, from Jessica's friends, probably. People she had put up to finding me. I opened Jessica's messages, not all of them, just a few. To know what she was thinking. Mom, where are you? We're worried. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. How could you do this to us? Kevin is desperate. They're going to sue him because of you. Because of me. I read that line several times. Because of me. As if I had signed that loan. As if I had taken that money. As if I were responsible for the decisions of a grown man who didn't even consult me before getting into debt. I kept reading. Mom, if you don't show up, I'm calling the police. This is emotional abuse. You're manipulating us. I can't believe you're being so selfish. Selfish. That word hit me. Me, who had given my entire life for her. Me, who had sacrificed everything. I was selfish for finally saying no. I closed the messages. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that she could understand. Instead, I opened a search app. I needed to find something. Someone, a lawyer. Someone who could guide me. Who could tell me what my legal options were. I searched. Family Lawyer Miami. Several results appeared. I read profiles, reviews, experiences. I found one. Catherine Kate Sterling, specialist in family law and financial abuse. Her office was 20 minutes from the hotel. I called. A receptionist answered. Law Office of Catherine Sterling. How can I help you? I need a consultation, I said with a trembling voice. It's urgent. What is the case regarding? Family matter, financial abuse. I need guidance. There was a pause. I heard computer keys typing. We have an opening available today at 3 in the afternoon. Does that work for you? Yes, I said immediately. I'll be there. She gave me the address. I wrote it down on a hotel napkin. I hung up. I had 6 hours before the appointment. I decided to go out. Walk. Get to know the city a little. I left the hotel. The heat was intense, but there was a breeze coming off the ocean. I walked aimlessly, without thinking much, just letting myself go. I passed by shops, restaurants, small parks full of people. Everything was different from my city. Faster, louder, more alive. I stopped at a cafe. I ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. Classic comfort food. I sat outside, at a table under an umbrella. An older woman sat at the table next to mine. She must have been my age, maybe a little older. She was alone too, reading a book. Our eyes met. She smiled. I smiled back. Nice day, she said. Yes, I replied. Very nice. Visiting? Something like that. She nodded, as if she understood I didn't want to talk more, and she didn't insist. She just went back to her book. That small interaction made me feel less alone, less lost. I finished my lunch, kept walking. I saw a church, small, old, with the doors open. I went in. I hadn't been in a church in years, since Arthur's funeral, but something called to me. Inside it was cool, dark, silent. There were a few people sitting in the pews, praying, thinking. I sat in the last row. I didn't pray. I didn't have words to pray. I just stayed there, sitting, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. And then I cried. For the first time since it all began, I cried, in silence, without sobbing, just tears running down my cheeks. I cried for the lost years, for the relationship with my daughter that had broken without me knowing when, for Arthur, who was no longer there to advise me, for the life I had lived always thinking of others and never of myself. But I also cried from relief, because I had gotten out, because I had saved myself, because I had finally said enough. I stayed there for almost an hour. When I left, I felt lighter, as if I had left something heavy inside. I went back to the hotel. I changed my clothes. I put on something more formal for the appointment with the lawyer. At 2:30, I took a cab. I gave the address to the driver. We arrived at an office building, not very big, about 5 floors. Attorney Sterling's office was on the 3rd. I went up in the elevator, found the door, knocked. The receptionist welcomed me. She asked me to fill out some basic forms. Name, age, reason for consultation. Under reason for consultation I wrote, financial abuse by family member, unauthorized loan request. I waited a few minutes. Then the inner door opened. A woman of about 45 came out, dark hair pulled back, gray suit, intelligent and firm gaze. Mrs. Eleanor? She asked. Yes, I replied, standing up. I'm Kate Sterling. Please, come in. I entered her office. It was small but tidy. Law books on the shelves, diplomas on the walls, a desk with a computer. I sat across from her. She sat on the other side of the desk. Tell me what's going on, she said with a soft but professional voice, and I told her. Everything. From the beginning, since Jessica arrived at my house demanding $500,000, since the years of emotional abuse, since my escape, since my fear that this wouldn't end well. She listened without interrupting, taking notes every now and then, nodding. Her eyes showed understanding, but also concern. When I finished, she stayed quiet for a moment, looking at her notes. Then she spoke. Mrs. Eleanor, what you are describing to me is a clear pattern of financial and emotional abuse. Your daughter has been exploiting you for years, and now it has reached a dangerous point. Dangerous? I asked. Yes. $500,000 is a huge sum. If your son-in-law is being sued for that amount, it means there are financial institutions involved. Banks, possibly private lenders. These people aren't patient, and if he can't pay, they will look for other ways to recover their money. But I didn't sign anything, I said. I'm not responsible for his debt. Legally, no. But that doesn't mean they won't try to involve you. They can accuse you of complicity. They can try to prove that you knew about the loan. They can seek access to your accounts if your daughter has or had any kind of legal authorization over them. My heart started beating faster. What should I do? She leaned forward. First, we need to protect your assets completely. You already took a good step by moving your money. But we need more. We need to document everything, every conversation, every demand, every threat. We need to build a case that proves you are the victim here, not the accomplice. And then, if necessary, we ask for a restraining order, so your daughter can't get close to you, so she can't harass you, so she understands that this has legal consequences, a restraining order, against my own daughter. The idea hurt, but at the same time, it gave me strength. How much does all this cost? I asked. She gave me a figure. It wasn't cheap, but it was necessary, and I had the money. Okay, I said. I want to do it. She smiled. A small but genuine smile. We're going to protect you, Mrs. Eleanor. You're not alone in this. Those words made me cry again. But this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. I left the office an hour later with a plan, with concrete steps, with someone on my side. And for the first time since it all began, I felt like I was going to be okay, that I was going to survive this, that I was going to win. I went back to the hotel with my mind full of everything Kate Sterling had told me. I had tasks, things to do, documents to gather. I didn't feel lost anymore. I had a path, I had a purpose. I entered my room and pulled out my phone. It was time to face what I had been avoiding. I opened Jessica's messages, the new ones, the ones I had received in the last few hours. Mom, this isn't funny anymore. We need to talk now. Kevin says if you don't pay, he's going to have to do things he doesn't want to do. Don't force him. That last line chilled my blood. What did that mean? Was it a threat? Was Kate right? This was more dangerous than I had thought. I took screenshots of every message, of every missed call. The lawyer had told me to save everything. Every piece of evidence was important. Then I opened my email. I searched for all the messages Jessica had sent me over the last few years. Every time she had asked for money, every promise to pay it back, every lie disguised as an emergency. There were more than I remembered. 20, 30 emails, some from 5 years ago, others more recent, a clear pattern, over and over and over again. I saved them all. I organized them into a folder. I would print them later. While I was doing this, my phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated, but I answered, "Yes, Mrs. Eleanor?" It was a man's voice. Formal, cold. "Who is this?" "My name is Vincent Moore. I am a lawyer. I represent your son-in-law, Mr. Kevin Davis." My heart skipped a beat. They had already gotten a lawyer. They were already taking legal measures. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk about my client's financial situation. I understand you have refused to comply with a family agreement. This is causing serious legal problems for Mr. Davis." "There is no agreement," I said with a stronger voice. "I never signed anything. I never agreed to pay that debt. I understand that your daughter presented you with the documents and you verbally agreed to help. In some cases, a verbal agreement is binding." "Well then sue me," I said, surprising myself with my own bravery. "If you think I have any legal responsibility, do it through the proper channels, but don't call me to intimidate me." There was silence on the other end. "Mrs. Eleanor, this doesn't have to be complicated. If you simply—" I hung up. My hands were shaking. I had hung up on a lawyer. Never in my life had I done something like that. Immediately I called Kate Sterling. She answered after 3 rings. "Attorney Sterling." "Kate, a lawyer just called me. He says he represents my son-in-law, that there is a verbal agreement." "What?" "Breathe, Mrs. Eleanor," she interrupted me calmly. "What exactly did he tell you?" I told her the whole conversation, word for word. "Okay," she said when I finished. "You did the right thing by hanging up. Don't speak to that lawyer again. If he calls back, tell him you have legal representation and to contact me. I'm going to text you my info. Save it. And if they contact you again, in any way, call me immediately. Understood? And, Mrs. Eleanor, This confirms what I told you. They are desperate. And desperate people do reckless things. We need to move fast. We hung up. 5 minutes later, I received a message with all of Kate Sterling's information. Her full name, her license number, her office address. Everything I needed to prove I had legal representation. I sat on the bed. My heart was still beating fast. But it wasn't just fear. It was also something else. It was the feeling that I was finally fighting, that I was finally defending myself. I spent the rest of the day organizing documents. I printed everything I could at the hotel business center. Bank statements, emails, text messages, everything. When I finished, I had a thick binder full of evidence. Evidence of years of abuse, of manipulation, of endless demands. At 7 in the evening, I went down to grab some dinner. There was a small restaurant next to the hotel. It served American comfort food. That made me smile. Even here, far from home, the food reminded me of who I was. I ordered meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. Thinking, I thought about Jessica when she was little, how I carried her when she cried, how I sang her to sleep, how I dreamed of her future, that she would be happy, that she would be a good person. Where had I gone wrong? At what moment did I give too much? At what moment did I teach her that taking was better than giving? Or maybe it wasn't my fault? Maybe some people simply choose selfishness. They choose to see others as resources and not as people. I didn't have the answers. And I probably never would. I finished dinner. I went back to the hotel. In the lobby, a television was on. The news. They were talking about the economy, about crisis, about families losing their homes due to debt. I wondered how many of those families had stories like mine, how many mothers were being pressured, how many grandmothers were handing over their savings for ungrateful children. I went up to my room. I got ready for bed. But before lying down, I did something I had been putting off. I wrote a message. Not to Jessica. To my grandsons. My darlings. Grandma had to go away for a while. It is not your fault. I love you very much. Someday, you will understand. Love, Grandma Eleanor. I sent it to both of them. I knew Jessica would probably see those messages, that she would probably take their phones away, but at least I had tried. I lay down, closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop. I thought about everything that was coming, about the legal process, about the possible consequences, about if I could ever return to my house. At 2 in the morning, I was still awake. I got up, went to the window, looked at the empty parking lot, the streetlights, the few cars passing by, and then my phone beeped. A text message from Jessica. Mom, please. Kevin is crying. He says he's going to lose everything. The banks are threatening him. There are dangerous people involved, people who lent him money and now want to collect. He says if he doesn't pay, they're going to hurt us. Me, the kids. Please, Mom, you can't leave us alone in this. I read the message 3 times. I felt the hook, the manipulation, the attempt to make me feel guilty, to make me feel responsible. But I also saw something else. I saw the truth between the lines. Dangerous people, private lenders. Kevin didn't just owe banks. He owed people who collected in other ways, loan sharks, and that scared me. Not for myself, for my grandsons. I called Kate. It was 2 in the morning, but she had told me to call if it was urgent. She answered with a sleepy voice. Mrs. Eleanor? Kate, I'm sorry for the hour, but I just got a message. Jessica says there are dangerous people involved, private lenders, that they are threatening the family. Silence fell. I heard her move, turning on a light, probably. She says they are threatening the kids? Yes. This changes things. If there are real threats against minors, we have to report it. We can't ignore that. Report it? To whom? To the police. And possibly Child Protective Services. If those kids are in danger because of their parents' decisions, someone has to intervene. But Jessica is going to hate me. She's going to say I'm trying to take her kids away. Mrs. Eleanor, if what your daughter says is true, those kids are already in danger. And if it's a lie, it is an extremely serious attempt at manipulation. Either way, we need the authorities to know. She was right. I knew it. But the weight of that decision was enormous. What do I do now? Save that message. Don't delete it. Tomorrow, first thing, we go to the police. We are going to report both the threats you have received and the alleged threats against the children. We are going to put all of this in the hands of the authorities. Okay, I said with a trembling voice. Try to rest. I know it's hard, but tomorrow is going to be a long day. You need to be strong. We hung up. I went back to bed. But I knew I wouldn't sleep. I thought about my grandsons, about their innocent faces, about how they weren't to blame for any of this. And I made a decision. I would do whatever was necessary to protect them, even if that meant Jessica hating me forever, even if that meant losing my daughter completely, because in the end, protecting the innocent was more important than keeping the peace. The hours passed slowly. I watched the sunrise through the window, the sky changing from black to gray to orange. At 6 a.m, I got up, showered, dressed, got ready. Today we would go to the police. Today, everything would change. At 8 a.m, Kate picked me up at the hotel. She arrived in a gray sedan, professional, discreet. I was already waiting for her in the lobby with my binder of documents under my arm. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor," she greeted me when I got in the car. "How did you sleep?" "I didn't," I replied honestly. She nodded with understanding. "It's normal. What we're going to do today isn't easy, but it is necessary." She drove toward the nearest police precinct. During the drive, she explained what would happen. "We are going to file a formal complaint for harassment, for attempted extortion, and we are going to report the threats your daughter mentioned about dangerous people. The police will determine if there is enough evidence to investigate. And if Jessica says I'm lying, that I'm exaggerating, that's why we brought all the evidence. The messages, the emails, the calls, everything is documented. It's not your word against hers. It's facts." We arrived at the station, a large concrete building with patrol cars parked outside. It scared me. I had never been inside a police station. We entered. The place smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. There were people waiting. A woman with a crying child, a man with a bruised face, a couple arguing in hushed tones. Kate approached the front desk, spoke with an officer, explained that we needed to file a report. He asked us to wait. We sat on hard plastic chairs. I held my binder so tightly, my knuckles turned white. "Breathe," Kate told me. "It's going to be okay." After 20 minutes, they called us. A detective received us. He was a man of about 50, with graying hair and a tired but attentive look. "I'm Detective Mike Miller," he introduced himself. "Come into my office." We entered a small room. There was a desk, 3 chairs, an old recorder in the corner. "Tell me what's going on," the detective said, sitting down and pulling out a notepad. Kate took the lead first. She explained the situation in legal terms: financial abuse, harassment, extortion, threats. Then it was my turn. I told him everything, from the beginning, since Jessica appeared demanding $500,000, since my escape, since the calls from the lawyer, since the last message where she mentioned dangerous people. The detective listened without interrupting. He took notes. Sometimes he nodded, sometimes he frowned. When I finished, he looked at my documents, reviewed the messages, the emails, the bank statements, showing the transfers of money I had given Jessica in previous years. "This is a clear pattern," he said finally, "a pattern of financial abuse. And this latest threat about dangerous people is concerning. Did your daughter mention names? Organizations?" "No," I replied. "She just said Kevin owed dangerous people, private lenders." The detective leaned back in his chair. He thought for a moment. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Eleanor. Cases like this are complicated. Legally, you are not responsible for your son-in-law's debts. But if he is involved with illegal lenders, that's another thing. Those lenders don't follow the rules. They can try to pressure you. They can try to intimidate you. That's why I'm here," I said. "I don't want them to find me. I don't want them to force me to pay something I don't owe." "I understand. I'm going to open an investigation. We are going to contact your daughter and your son-in-law. We are going to ask them about these supposed threats, and we are going to verify if there is really criminal activity involved." "And my grandsons?" I asked. "Are they safe? If there are real threats against minors, we are going to involve social services. They will evaluate the situation, but I need you to understand something, Mrs. Eleanor. Once this starts, there is no turning back. Your daughter is going to know you came here. There will be family consequences. I know, I said with a firm voice. But I can't keep being a victim, and I can't allow my grandsons to be in danger. The detective nodded respectfully. You are brave for doing this. We filled out more forms. I signed documents. They gave me a case number. The detective gave me his personal card. If you receive more threats, call me immediately, day or night. And keep in touch with your lawyer. Don't face this alone. We left the station 2 hours later. The sun was high. It was hot. But I felt strangely calm. How do you feel? Kate asked when we got in the car. Scared, I admitted, but also relieved. Like finally someone is listening to me. Someone is listening. And someone is going to act. This isn't just between you and your daughter anymore. Now there are authorities involved. She took me back to the hotel. Before I got out, she gave me more instructions. The next few days are going to be difficult. The police will probably contact Jessica today or tomorrow. She is going to react. She is going to call you. She is going to send messages. She will possibly say horrible things. Do not answer. Save everything, but do not answer. And if she tries to come here, if she finds me, that's why we are going to request a temporary restraining order tomorrow morning. That will prohibit her from approaching you. If she does, she will be arrested. A restraining order against my own daughter. The reality of that hit me again. I know it's hard, Kate said, putting her hand on mine, but it is necessary. You have the right to be safe. You have the right to live without fear. I got out of the car, entered the hotel, went up to my room, sat on the bed, and waited. I waited for the world to come crashing down. I didn't have to wait long. At 3 p.m, my phone exploded. Jessica called me 17 times in half an hour. She left voicemails full of screaming, of insults, of accusations. You went to the police? Seriously, Mom? You're reporting us? Your own family? You are a snake, a traitor. After everything we've done for you, the kids are crying. You told them you were leaving because of us. How could you do that to them? I listened to one of the messages. Just one. It was enough. Her voice was full of venom, of pure rage. But there was also something else. There was fear. Fear that this was spiraling out of her control. I turned off the phone. I couldn't keep listening. I couldn't keep absorbing her hate. I lay on the bed. I looked at the ceiling. And I asked myself if I was doing the right thing. What if I was exaggerating? What if Jessica really needed help and I was abandoning her? But then I remembered. I remembered the years of thankless sacrifice. I remembered how she had treated me that morning when she arrived to demand the money. I remembered her coldness, her manipulation. No, I wasn't exaggerating. I was surviving. That night I ate little. I felt sick to my stomach. Anxiety was consuming me. I tried to watch TV, but I couldn't concentrate. I tried to read, but the words moved in front of my eyes. Finally, I turned my phone back on. More messages, more calls. But now there were also messages from other numbers. From Kevin, Mrs. Eleanor, please, speak to Jessica. This is getting out of control. The police came to ask questions. They are investigating us. All because of you, because of me. Always because of me. Another message, from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Eleanor, I am Officer Angela Brooks from Child Protective Services. We need to speak about your grandchildren. Please contact my office as soon as possible. My heart stopped. CPS. They had involved CPS. I called Kate immediately. I know, she said, before I could speak. Officer Brooks contacted me too. It's standard procedure. When there are reports of threats against minors, they have to investigate. Are they going to take the kids away from Jessica? Only if they find evidence of immediate danger. For now, they are just going to do an assessment. They are going to interview Jessica, Kevin. They are going to see the conditions of the home. They are going to talk to the kids. Jessica is going to blame me for this. Jessica is responsible for her own decisions. If there are problems, they are problems she and Kevin created. Not you. I spent the whole night awake, thinking, worrying, imagining my grandsons, confused, scared. At 6 in the morning, I received a message from Jessica, different from the others, calmer, more calculated. Mom, I spoke to social services. I told them everything was fine, that there is no danger, that you exaggerated because you are angry with us. But they told me you have to confirm that if you don't withdraw your complaint, they are going to keep investigating. Please, Mom, for the kids, withdraw all of this. Let's start over. I read the message 5 times. It was a trap, a more elaborate manipulation. She wanted me to withdraw the complaint. She wanted me to say I had lied, and if I did, I would lose all credibility, and I would be left unprotected. I didn't answer. Instead, I got dressed, left the hotel, walked until I found a coffee shop, ordered coffee, and sat down to think. I had crossed a line. There was no turning back. And now I had to keep going forward, with fear, with pain. But keep going, because going back meant becoming a victim again, and I was no longer that woman. 3 days after the report, Kate called me with news. Mrs. Eleanor, the temporary restraining order was approved. Your daughter cannot contact you by any means. She cannot come within 100 yards of where you are. If she does, she will be arrested. I felt a weight lift from my chest. But at the same time, I felt a deep sadness. A restraining order against my own daughter. I never thought my life would come to this. And the investigation? I asked. Detective Miller found something interesting. Kevin definitely has debts with private lenders, people operating outside the law, but there is no evidence of direct threats against the family. It seems Jessica exaggerated that part to manipulate you. I wasn't surprised. Nothing Jessica did surprised me anymore. And social services? They did the assessment. The kids are physically fine. There are no signs of abuse or neglect. But Jessica and Kevin's financial situation is precarious, very precarious. The house is in foreclosure proceedings. They have debts everywhere. The kids are going to have to move soon. My heart squeezed. My grandsons, innocent in all this. Can I help them? The kids, not Jessica. You could, but you would need to do it through proper legal channels. And it would have to be directly for them. Education, basic needs, never cash that Jessica could use for other things. I want to do it. I want to make sure my grandsons are okay. We'll talk about it. But first, you need to stabilize yourself. You need to find a place to live. You can't stay in that hotel forever. She was right. I had been in the hotel for a week. It was expensive, and it wasn't sustainable. I don't know where to go, I admitted. I can't go back to my house. Not yet. Do you have family? Friends in other cities? I thought. I had a cousin, Sarah. She lived in Texas. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we had always been close when we were young. I have a cousin in Houston, I said. No, wait, Austin. I have a cousin in Austin. Call her. Explain the situation. Sometimes extended family can surprise us. That afternoon, with trembling hands, I dialed Sarah's number. I didn't know if it was still the same after so many years. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, Sarah? It's Eleanor, your cousin. There was a silence, then an exclamation of surprise. Eleanor? Oh my God, how many years has it been? How are you? Her warm voice made me cry. I cried before I could answer. Sarah, I need help. And I told her everything. Every detail. Every pain. Every betrayal. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, the only thing she said was, pack your things. I'm sending you money for a bus ticket. You're coming here. You stay with me as long as you need. Sarah, I can't impose. It's not imposing. It's family. Real family. The kind that doesn't charge you for existing. Come, please. I cried more. But this time they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of gratitude. 2 days later, I was on a bus heading to Austin. I had left the hotel. I had left Miami. I carried only my small bag and my binder of documents. The trip lasted 18 hours. It was 18 hours of thinking, of remembering, of trying to understand how I had arrived here. When I arrived at the bus station in Austin, Sarah was waiting for me. I recognized her immediately. She had the same curly hair, the same wide smile, only now with more gray and more wrinkles. We hugged. A long hug, a hug that said everything words couldn't. "Welcome home," she said. She took me to her apartment. It was small but cozy. It had 2 bedrooms. She had lived alone since she got divorced years ago. "This is your room," she said, showing me the guest room. "It's not much, but it's yours for as long as you need it." It was perfect. A bed, a closet, a window that looked out onto a small garden. "It's more than I deserve," I said. "Nonsense. It's less than you deserve after everything you've been through." That night we had dinner together. She made soup, homemade bread. We talked for hours. I told her more details. She told me about her life, about her divorce, about how she had to start over at 50. "Starting over is terrifying," she said, "but it's also liberating. You get to decide who you want to be, without the weight of others' expectations." Her words resonated with me. The first few days in Austin were strange. I felt out of place, lost, but Sarah was patient. She took me to get to know the neighborhood, introduced me to her neighbors, showed me the local library. "You need to get out," she would say. "You need to start living again." Little by little, I started to find a routine. I got up early, walked through the nearby park, went to the library, read. Sometimes I just sat on a bench and watched people. One afternoon, in the park, I saw a woman selling crafts, hand-knitted bags, embroidered tablecloths, beautiful things. I approached, touched them. The texture brought back memories. I used to knit when I was young, before life became so complicated, before everything was about giving without receiving anything. "Do you like it?" the woman asked. She was older than me. She had wrinkled hands and kind eyes. "It's beautiful," I said. "Did you make it?" "Yes. It's my passion. And my livelihood." "Does it sell much?" "Enough. I don't get rich, but I pay my bills, and it makes me happy. That's what's important." I bought one of her bags. A small one, with embroidered flowers. It was expensive for my current budget, but I needed it. I needed to have something pretty, something that reminded me that beauty still existed. When I got back to the apartment, Sarah saw the bag. "It's gorgeous," she said. "Where did you get it?" "A lady in the park. She makes them by hand." Sarah looked at me with a strange expression. "You know, you used to do things like that. I remember when we were young, you were always knitting, embroidering. You had incredible talent." I had forgotten that. I had forgotten that I once had passions, hobbies, things I did just for me. "I haven't done anything like that in so long," I said with sadness. "Well, maybe it's time to start again." That night, while I was in bed, I thought about her words. Starting over. Not just where I lived, but who I was. The next day, Sarah took me to a craft store. We bought yarn, knitting needles, embroidery fabric. "I don't know if I still remember how," I said, doubting. "The hands remember." "You'll see." At home, I laid out the materials. I took the needles, the yarn, and I started. At first, my fingers were clumsy, stiff. It had been years since they did this. But little by little, they began to remember. The movement, the rhythm. I spent hours knitting, lost in the process. For the first time in weeks, I didn't think about Jessica. I didn't think about Kevin. I didn't think about debts or threats or pain. I just knitted. I made a scarf. Simple, with mistakes, but mine. Completely mine. Sarah saw it and smiled. "It's beautiful. You should make more. You could sell them." "Sell them? I don't know if they're good enough. They're perfect. They have soul. That's what people buy. Not perfection, but something made with love." The idea stayed with me. Could I do this? Could I support myself doing something I loved? Over the next few weeks, I knitted more. Scarves, beanies, small bags. Each piece was an act of healing. Every stitch was a way to recover something I had lost. Sarah helped me create an account on an online sales platform, Etsy. We took photos of my creations. We posted them. I didn't expect anything to happen. But a week later, I sold my first piece. A mustard-colored scarf. $20. $20 I had earned with my own hands, with my own talent. I cried when the payment came through. Not because it was a lot of money, but because it was mine, because I had created it, because no one had given it to me out of pity or manipulation. Sales started coming more often. Not many. I wouldn't get rich. But it was something. It was a start. Meanwhile, Kate kept me informed about the case. The investigation against Kevin had revealed more debts, more problems. He had lied on bank documents. He had used Jessica's identity to open accounts without her knowledge. "This is bigger than we thought," she told me over the phone. "Kevin isn't just irresponsible. He's criminal. He has committed wire fraud, identity theft, and Jessica might be involved without knowing." What does that mean? It means both could face charges. Jessica could go to jail, or at least have a record that will affect her life for years. I thought about my grandsons, about what this would mean for them. Is there anything I can do? For the grandkids? Yes. We could request temporary custody if the situation requires it. But that would mean more legal battles, more money, more pain. I didn't know what to do. Every option seemed to lead to more suffering. That night, I spoke with Sarah. I told her everything. She looked at me with those wise eyes she had developed over the years. "Eleanor, you can't save everyone. Sometimes you can only save yourself and build something stable enough so that others can hold on to it if they decide to." She was right. I couldn't solve Jessica's problems. I couldn't clean up Kevin's mess. I could only keep building my own life, my own stability. And maybe, just maybe, one day, my grandsons could come to me, and I would have something to offer them. Not money, but peace, love, a safe place. For now, that would have to be enough. 2 months after moving in with Sarah, I received a call from Detective Miller. "Mrs. Eleanor, I need to inform you of something important. We have arrested Kevin Davis." My heart skipped a beat. Why? What happened? Bank fraud, forgery of documents, identity theft. We found that he used his wife's personal information to open lines of credit. He also attempted to use your data, Mrs. Eleanor. He had copies of your ID, of your bank documents. I felt dizzy. Kevin had tried to use my identity. If I hadn't left, if I hadn't frozen my accounts, I would be drowning in debt that wasn't mine. "And Jessica?" I asked with a trembling voice. "She is being investigated. For now, there are no charges against her. It seems she was a victim too. Kevin hid much of what he was doing, but she will have to testify and face the financial consequences of all this." I hung up the phone and sat in silence. Sarah entered the living room and saw me. "What happened?" I told her. "Everything." She sat beside me. "How do you feel?" "I don't know." Relieved that they caught him, but sad for Jessica. Even though she treated me horribly, she is still my daughter. It's natural to feel that. But remember, you didn't cause this. Kevin caused this, and Jessica chose not to see the signs. The following days were strange. I kept my routine. I knitted. I sold my pieces. But my mind was constantly on Jessica, on my grandsons. One afternoon, while I was at the park selling some of my creations next to the lady who had inspired me, I saw something that paralyzed me. A man, tall, wearing a cap and sunglasses. He was standing on the other side of the park, looking toward me. I didn't recognize him, but something in his posture made me nervous. He seemed to be waiting, watching. I gathered my things quickly, told the lady I had to go, walked fast toward the bus stop. The man started walking too, in my direction. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I picked up the pace. He did too. I reached the bus stop just as one was arriving. I got on quickly, looked out the window. The man had stopped at the corner, pulled out his phone, made a call. The bus pulled away. I was shaking. When I got to the apartment, I called Kate immediately. "Kate, I think someone is following me." "What? Where?" I told her about the man in the park. "Mrs. Eleanor, this is serious. If someone is watching you, it could be a debt collector working for Kevin's private lenders, dangerous people looking for any way to recover their money. But I don't owe anything. They don't know that. And they don't care. They see you are family. They think they can pressure you. What do I do? First, call Detective Miller. Report this. Second, don't go out alone for a few days. And third, consider seriously changing locations temporarily." I did everything she told me. Detective Miller took my report. He said they would increase patrols in my area, but he also warned they couldn't protect me 24/7. The next few days, I didn't leave the apartment. Sarah went to the grocery store. I stayed inside, knitting, trying not to think that someone might be looking for me. One night, at 11, my phone rang. An unknown number. I didn't answer. They called again. And again. On the fourth attempt, I answered. Yes, Mrs. Eleanor. It was a man's voice. Raspy. Threatening. We know where you are. I hung up immediately. My hands shook so much the phone almost fell. Sarah came out of her room. What was that? They called me. They said they know where I am. We called the police. 2 officers came. They took my statement, traced the number. It was a prepaid burner phone, untraceable. Ma'am, we consider you to be at risk, one of the officers said. Do you have somewhere you can stay temporarily? Family in another state? I had no one else, only Sarah. And now I was putting Sarah in danger too. Kate called me the next morning. Mrs. Eleanor, I spoke with Detective Miller. The situation is serious. Kevin's loan sharks are desperate. With him in jail, they can't collect. So they are looking for you. What can I do? I can't live on the run forever. There is an option. A temporary protection program. It's not the formal witness protection program, but it's a shelter for victims of extortion and financial threats. You would be in a secure location for a few months while the police dismantle this ring. And Sarah could also enter the program if she feels she is at risk. I spoke with Sarah that night. I explained everything. I'm not going to let you face this alone, she said firmly. If there is a safe place, we both go. 3 days later, they moved us. They didn't tell us exactly where until we arrived. It was a house on the outskirts of San Antonio. Simple, secured, with surveillance. There were other women there, other stories, other escapes. A woman named Mary had escaped a violent husband, another, Susan, from an addicted son who had threatened her, all looking for the same thing. Safety, peace, a chance to start over. The first few weeks were difficult. I felt locked up, trapped, but little by little I understood it wasn't a prison. It was a refuge. I got to know the other women. We shared stories. We cried together. We laughed together. We supported each other. And I kept knitting. Now I made pieces for everyone. Scarves, beanies, small blankets, each one with different colors, with different stories woven into every stitch. One afternoon, Mary told me something I will never forget. Eleanor, look at what you have created here. Not just pretty things. You have created hope. Every time you knit, you remind us that we can create something new with our hands. That we aren't broken. We are just rebuilding ourselves. Her words touched my heart. While I was in the shelter, Detective Miller kept working. They arrested 2 men connected to the lenders. They found documents linking them to Kevin, to the threats, to the extortion ring. Mrs. Eleanor, we are dismantling everything, he informed me over the phone. But we need your testimony. We need you to declare formally about the threats, about everything that happened. I will have to see Kevin. Probably. But it will be in a courtroom. With protection. You will be safe. I agreed. Because I was no longer afraid. Or rather, I was afraid. But I had learned that fear didn't have to paralyze me. I could feel fear and still keep going. The testimony date was set for a month away. Meanwhile, I stayed at the shelter, knitting, healing, preparing myself to face whatever was coming. The day of the trial arrived faster than I expected. I got up early, dressed in simple but dignified clothes, a gray dress, comfortable shoes. Sarah had helped me get ready. You're going to be okay, she told me while she hugged me. Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. Kate picked me up from the shelter. In the car, we went over everything. When they ask you, answer calmly, clearly. Don't let Kevin's lawyer intimidate you. He will try to make you look like the bad guy, as if you had exaggerated. But we have all the evidence, the messages, the calls, everything. We arrived at the courthouse, a large stone building. There were people everywhere, lawyers in suits, families waiting, police standing guard. We entered the courtroom. I sat on the bench designated for witnesses, looked around. And then I saw him, Kevin, sitting at the front with his lawyer. He wore a cheap suit. He kept his gaze down. He looked thinner, older, and beside him, in the bench behind, was Jessica, my daughter. Our eyes met for a second. I saw her eyes. They were red, swollen from crying. But there was also something else. There was shame. I looked away. I couldn't think about that now. I had to focus. The judge entered. We all stood up. The hearing began. The prosecutor presented the case. Fraud, document forgery, attempted extortion, threats. Each charge was more serious than the last. Then they called me to testify. I walked to the stand, put my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. I sat down. The prosecutor approached. Mrs. Eleanor, can you tell us what happened the day your daughter arrived at your house? And I told it, with a steady voice, without crying, without shaking. I told about the demand for $500,000. About the pressure, about how I felt threatened, about my decision to leave. The prosecutor showed the messages, the emails, the recordings of the threatening calls. Do you recognize this voice, Mrs. Eleanor? It was the voice of the man who had called me that night. The voice that had said, "We know where you are." Yes, it is the voice of the man who threatened me. The prosecutor presented evidence connecting that man to Kevin. Text messages, money transfers, all documented. Then it was the defense lawyer's turn. He approached me with a fake smile, a smile that tried to seem kind but was pure manipulation. Mrs. Eleanor, isn't it true that you exaggerated this situation because you were upset with your daughter? No, I replied firmly. I fled because I was afraid, because the demand was impossible, because I felt I had no choice. But your daughter never threatened you directly, right? She didn't need to threaten me directly. The pressure, the manipulation, the emotional weight, all of that was enough. And isn't it true that you have enough money to have helped? That you simply decided not to do it? I have savings that are for my old age, for my survival. I do not have the obligation to pay someone else's debts, especially when that person has treated me like a resource and not like a mother. The lawyer tried to keep pressing, but the judge stopped him. That is enough. The witness has answered. I went back to my seat. My legs were shaking. But I had done it. I had spoken my truth. Other witnesses testified. Detective Miller, the officers who had helped me, a financial expert who explained Kevin's fraud. Finally, the judge gave his verdict. Mr. Kevin Davis is found guilty of bank fraud, forgery of documents, and conspiracy to commit extortion. He is sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. I heard Jessica sob behind me, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. After the trial, I walked out of the courthouse. Kate walked beside me. You did very well, Mrs. Eleanor. You were brave. I don't feel brave. I feel tired. It's normal. But this is over. Kevin won't be able to threaten you ever again. The lenders are being prosecuted too. You are safe. As we walked toward the car, I heard a voice behind me. Mom. I stopped, turned around. It was Jessica. She was standing a few feet away, crying, with her arms crossed over her chest as if protecting herself. Mom, I didn't know. I didn't know everything Kevin was doing. I didn't know he had threatened you like that. I looked at her. I saw my daughter, but I also saw a stranger. Jessica, you demanded that money from me. You pressured me. You made me feel like I was selfish for wanting to keep what was mine. I know, and I'm sorry. I was desperate. Kevin had lied to me about so many things. I thought if you helped us, everything would be fixed. But it never gets fixed when you give money to someone who doesn't know how to handle it. You just postpone the problem. She nodded, crying harder. I lost the house, Mom. I lost everything. And now I'm going to raise my kids alone. Without Kevin, without money, without anything. Part of me wanted to run to her, hug her, tell her everything would be okay. But another part, the part that had learned to protect itself, stayed still. Jessica, I can't save you from this. This is the consequence of the decisions you and Kevin made. But your grandsons are innocent. I know. There is an account I opened. For their education, for their needs. You will never have direct access to that money. But they will be taken care of, always. Her eyes widened in surprise. After everything. After everything I did to you, you're still going to help my kids? They aren't the ones who hurt me, and they deserve a chance. She took a step toward me. I took a step back. But you, Jessica, I can't have you in my life. Not right now. Maybe never. I need to heal. I need to live what remains of my life with peace. Mom, please. Take care of your children. Learn from this. Become someone better. That is the only way you can honor what we once had. I turned around, walked toward the car. I didn't look back. Kate took me back to the shelter. That night, I cried. I cried for the daughter I lost, for the relationship I would never have, for the years that wouldn't return. But I also felt something else. I felt I was whole, that I had closed a cycle. 6 months passed. I left the shelter. I rented a small apartment in Austin, near Sarah, but independent. I set up a small business. I sold my knits, at local markets, online. I didn't earn much, but it was enough. It was mine. I met other women who had gone through similar situations. We formed a support group. We met every week, shared stories, gave each other strength. I became someone other women turned to when they needed help, when they needed to hear that it was possible to survive, that it was possible to start over. One afternoon, I received a letter. It was from Jessica. I didn't open it immediately. I left it on the table. I looked at it for days. Finally, one quiet evening, I opened it. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I want you to know I am trying to be better. I got a job. The kids are okay. They use the money you set aside for them wisely. They go to a good school. They are in therapy. They are healing, and I am in therapy too, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you so much. I'm not asking you to come back. I just want you to know that your bravery taught me something. It taught me that women don't have to just take it, that we have the right to say enough. Thank you for that. I love you, even if I don't deserve to. Jessica. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer. Maybe one day I would answer. Maybe one day we could rebuild something. But not now. Now is my time. I sat on my small balcony, watched the sunset, the orange and pink colors filling the Texas sky, and I smiled. I had survived. I had escaped. I had started over. And for the first time in my life, I was completely free.